I love the menorah that stands in the back of our bima on the sanctuary. There are two of them. I love them because you can see one in the video of Martin Luther King. It was right behind him when he came to speak to our congregation, invited by our own Rabbi Max Nussbaum. I had that speech in mind when I went with Briskin Elementary School's sixth graders to the American South. On that trip, I was looking for a word that means the opposite of pilgrimage. That's why I thought I was going to the South. Our country is in the midst of a profound reckoning with racial injustice, and I'm part of that reckoning. The truth is that for much of my life, I was comfortable believing more or less in the American meritocracy, the idea that skill and hard work lead to success. I was aware of our horrific racist past, but I believed that we had, more or less, moved beyond it. I remember an article I read in 2015 about Rodricus Crawford, a black man whose one-year-old died in the middle of the night. While enduring that unbearable grief, he was charged with the murder of his baby. He was convicted and sentenced to death. Crawford was ultimately exonerated, but the trial was just dripping with racism. From the 911 dispatcher who said, "They probably slept on the damn baby. There's 100 folks in that damn house," to the Confederate statue on the front lawn of the courthouse with the tribute, it's a Confederate statue, to the deeds and valors of the men who so gallantly, nobly, and conscientiously defended the cause, to the evidence of pneumonia and sepsis in the pathology reports that were entirely dismissed as possible causes of the child's death. That article woke me up to the vast inequities that are simply woven into the fabric of our country and its systems. Wrongful convictions, to be sure, housing segregation, unequal education, political disenfranchisement, hindered opportunity, and on it goes. The list of ways in which we have not overcome racism. We have reshaped it, given it new expression and new outlets. So I thought this trip was going to be an anti-pilgrimage. If racism is pulsing through our nation, the South has historically been its heartbeat, its center, the place to go to confront our own capacity for inhumanity. But as soon as I got there, I realized that I was also on a pilgrimage of sorts. Because at the same moment that the South was home to our worst institutionalized atrocities, the South is also teeming with inspiration and holiness. And there is nowhere better to inspire holy action. We met one of our educators, Dr. Martha Boyer, at Kelly Ingram Park in Birmingham. Before we started, she pointed to the street where a broken fire hydrant was spewing out water. "Well, that's perfect for what we're going to see," she said. "Take a look at that power of that water. What do you think it would feel like if someone used it to attack you?" We were standing at the very site of the infamous fire hoses and attack dogs that were unleashed on the city's children. Nearly 1,000 children were arrested in Birmingham when they marched for integration on City Hall. They packed the city's jails. Why were so many children involved? In a documentary about Birmingham, Dr. Carolyn McKinstry recalls the children were the ones that volunteered. Most of the adults were afraid. Birmingham was a hotbed of civil rights and political activity. Ruled by segregationists long after segregation was found unconstitutional, the city was boiling over with marches, protests, and then their violent suppression. And then one day, Birmingham stood still. It was September 15th, 1963, exactly 60 years ago yesterday. Our guide, Dr. Martha Boyer, lived in a mining camp outside of the city. She went outside that morning to pick up her family's newspaper and heard an explosion. That was the bomb that went off inside 16th Street Baptist Church, killing 4 girls, almost exactly her age. Dr. McKinstry was inside the church. She can tell you exactly where she was standing when the bomb went off and when she learned that some of her friends never came out. She can also tell you about the follow-up. Monday morning, I was at school at 8 o'clock. There was no silent prayer. There was no assembly. No one ever asked, "Are you okay? Do you want to talk about what happened? Do you miss your friends? Are you afraid?" It settled very well in my thoughts, in my spirit, that you can kill black people in Birmingham and nothing happens. That would have been September 16th, 1963, 60 years ago today. We have a fleeting opportunity to meet the people who felt the ground shake on that day. We have a fleeting opportunity to ask them, do you want to talk about what happened? Do you miss your friends? Are you afraid? And that's as important as any pilgrimage I can think of. To be clear, not because the people of Birmingham need us, but because we need them to understand America. What is a pilgrimage? It's a religious obligation, a sacred journey, an encounter that changes us. In Judaism, 3 of our holidays used to be celebrated by making pilgrimage to Jerusalem. Sukkot, Pesach, and Shavuot are called Shalosh Regalim, 3 leg days, because they started with walking. You had to leave your home and go somewhere to meet God. You had to center yourself in the Jewish consciousness that is tied to that particular place. You had to feel the sights and sounds and smells that are only found there. And when you got home renewed and recharged, you had shared something with everyone in the community, near and far. It created a fundamental spiritual foundation. Every time we hear a story or tell a story, we don't just witness a truth, we create a truth. The truth of the South has got to be a foundation of our shared American spiritual consciousness. That's the only way toward a better future. If there is one thing we Jews know, it is the boundless power of a story. A story is about a moment in time and also so much more than that moment in time. That's the reason that we read the most difficult narratives of the first Jewish family on Rosh Hashanah. And then we read them again every single year. They are about Sarah and Hagar and Abraham and Isaac and Ishmael, and they're about us and the messes that we make of being parents, children, siblings, and spouses. They are about the ways that we are threatened and frightened, passive, and sometimes cruel. When the entire Jewish family comes together, why would we, the descendants of Sarah, read these words? Sarah saw the son whom Hagar the Egyptian had borne to Abraham playing. She said to him, "Cast out that slave woman and her son, for the son of that slave shall not share in the inheritance with my son Isaac." Later, when the water was gone, Hagar left the children under the bushes and went and sat down at a distance, a bow shot away, for she thought, "Let me not look on at the child as he dies." And thus sitting afar, she burst into tears. We read these words because confronting our deepest wounds and our darkest impulses is the same thing as refusing to be ruled by them. Keeping these stories alive is in and of itself a call to action. So too, the stories of Birmingham, Alabama. That's why the Baal Shem Tov taught, in remembrance is the secret of redemption. If you think going to the South is about long ago history, consider the Alabama state legislature. The United States Supreme Court ruled that it had violated the Voting Rights Act in drawing a district map that did not reflect data from the 2020 census. There was one majority black district, and the court ordered that lines be redrawn in order to add a second. Just this summer, the governor signed the original map, nonetheless, into law. His reasoning? We know better. And if you think the South is about the South, take the time to read the California Task Force study to study and develop reparations proposals for African Americans report. As these proposals get addressed in our state, we'll talk about them. For now, and for the sake of truth-telling, which is what I'm interested in right now, I'm just asking you to please read the report. It's devastating. Thousands of enslaved Americans in California, prominent Angelenos with ties to the KKK, government-financed whites-only neighborhoods, vast current health and wealth disparities, schools in black neighborhoods as recently as 2021 that could not afford paper. I want to pause to say a few words about us. Not everybody in this room is the same. Not everybody's white. Not everybody's Jewish. Still, there might be a sense along the lines of, okay, but what about the very same housing covenants that prohibited Jews? What about the atrocities that we faced, the things that we had to overcome in order to get where we are today? All of that is very true and very important. It's also a different topic. It might come up because it's a reflex. I have it too. A reflex that when we get this close to painful truths and sense maybe an implied accusation that we're on the wrong side of it. And we're worried that we're going to have to relinquish our identity and our sacred stories in order to do what is right. I want to share with you the work of Dr. Darren Graves, who teaches educators, parents, and children about disrupting racism in schools and communities. Central to his work are the following 3 points. 1, this work is not about teaching white people they should feel guilty about being white. It's about helping all people feel a sense of agency about making communities more equitable. 2, this work is not about casting the U.S. as an irredeemable project. It's about celebrating people of all backgrounds who have been resilient and stood on beautiful principles. And number 3, this work is not about instilling hopelessness, apathy, and blame-throwing. It is about building a sense of critical hope and celebrating the beauty of the work. You also might be thinking, okay, we know this. What does she want us to do? And I have 2 answers to that question. One is, to be honest, I don't know yet. There are ways that we can and will become active. But if we fast forward to a flurry of activity, we might miss the point. We might miss the reckoning. What I want us to do is deepen our awareness for a while. Take it in. Learn as much as we can. Listen to stories, affirm stories, tell stories. In remembrance is the secret to redemption. The other thing is, I would like you to go on American pilgrimage with me to the South. Our 10th graders in religious school that will go this winter. Briskin's current 6th grade class will go in the spring. And I'm leading an adult trip the first week of April. And I think we'll lead other trips because the clergy really wants to go too. So if April doesn't work, there'll be another one. And also, I'm bringing a little bit of that experience to us right here next week so that we'll all have the opportunity. Joanne Bland was our educator and guide in Selma. She will be our Yom Kippur afternoon guest speaker. I didn't tell her story this morning because I want you to hear it from her. Selma is her home, and she lived every minute of the struggle for civil rights there. Do you know what the opposite of pilgrimage is? Standing still, staying in place. The first stop on our trip last May was the King Center in Atlanta, which promotes education, research, and social change. It's also a tribute to Dr. King and Coretta Scott King. It's their final resting place. It was there that I realized I was engaged in a religious obligation, a sacred journey, an encounter that would change me, a pilgrimage. I looked into the faces of our students, not quite B'nai Mitzvah age. They were standing in front of the central feature in the courtyard of the King Center. It's a huge fountain built to look like a teeming, yet remarkably peaceful river. On it are the words of the prophet Amos, famously adapted by Dr. King. We will not be satisfied until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. I love that menorah in the sanctuary and knowing that Dr. King stood right there. But if we think that means that we have done all we need to do for racial justice, then we are standing still, staying in place, choosing to be satisfied. I have another idea. Let's keep learning and reckoning and working and partnering and galvanizing. Let's keep at it until justice rolls down like water and righteousness like a mighty stream. Shana Tova.